Good evening, members, officers, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Development Committee on the 23rd of November 2023. I will now read out the emergency evacuation announcement. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm goes off, please leave the building in an orderly fashion through the nearest fire exit. Please use either the fire exit through the main doors of the hall or the fire exit to the storeroom adjacent to the stage. The fire assembly point is the island in front of the main entrance of the building. Please do not delay your evacuation to collect any belongings. Please do not return to the building until given permission to do so by council staff. Please note that the meeting will be live streamed, and please switch off mobiles or turn them to silent. Members of the public are reminded that this is an official council meeting and the applications will be debated according to procedure rules set out in the council's constitution. Members of the public, can you please note that you are not permitted to speak at this meeting unless you've registered to speak with Democratic Services. In this way, everyone present will be able to hear the debate and councillors will be able to make an informed decision. Can I please also remind you to be respectful of all those attending the meeting, including other members of the public, councillors and officers. Members of the public, while you can of course film or take photographs during the meeting, this should be done without disrupting the meeting and can only be done from a designated area in the public seating. Can I please therefore ask you to raise your hand clearly in the air if you wish to take photographs or film this evening? I see no hands. Okay, thank you. Members, your voice will only be captured on the live stream when your microphone is switched on, so please remember to switch on your microphone when you're invited to speak and switch off again when not speaking. Members, voting will be done on a show of hands in line with the Constitution. I will ask for a show of hands for and then against recommendations, and will also ask for a show of hands for those wishing to abstain from the voting. Items 1 and 2, apologies for absence and substitutes. We've received apologies for absence from Councillor Stanley, Councillor Knight and Councillor Myers. Councillor James Newport is substituting for Councillor Stanley. Councillor Michael Hoy is substituting for Councillor Knight, and Councillor Arthur Williams is substituting for Councillor Myers. Non-members attending, I believe we have Councillor Lambourne and Councillor Wootton and Councillor Milne. Have I missed anyone? No? Okay, good, thank you. Minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of September 2023. Now, before I ask for agreement on this one, members, I have had communication from a resident making a point about this, and I have to point out that the purpose of the record of the minutes is to provide a formal record of the decisions made. It is not necessarily verbatim what is actually being said in the meeting. So with that being clear, members, are we agreed that on the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of September 23? Agreed? Yeah, okay, thank you. Item 5, to receive declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, members? Councillor Ward.
Member of Raleigh Town Council, if that's pertinent.
Councillor Mrs Shaw.
Essex County Councillor, if that's necessary.
Councillor Mrs Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. My declaration of interest is that I spoke at the previous meeting regarding a agenda item, and that being Grovewood Primary School. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now,
Chairman.
Sorry. Councillor Hoy, sorry I missed you there.
On advice from Tom Newcombe, I'm just not declaring interest, but I'm just making it clear that tonight I may mention, or it may be mentioned, about 3G pitches and policies around plastic pitches. And as lead member for climate, I'm leading on a development of policy on that within the council. So it's not a declaration of interest, but just to be open and transparent I've been advised to say that.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Oh, hang on, councillor Ward.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Also, on item number 7, regarding Grovewood, I will need to recuse myself as involvement in this previously as portfolio holder for strategic planning.
Okay, thank you. Any other thing, members? Any other declarations? No? Okay. Members, in accordance with committee procedure rule 9C, I'd like to move a motion without notice to change the order of the business on the agenda so that we take item 7 first. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mrs. Wilson? All those in favour? Okay, we can go ahead with that then. Now, before we start on that, okay, sorry for the delay there. Yes, so if we could proceed with the report there, please, and that would be Mike Stranks. Thank you very much. No, I'm sorry. Councillor Ward?
Do I need to leave at this moment?
Okay. We are. Give me a moment, please, members. Make sure where we are. As the Vice Chairman, Councillor Mrs. Vilma Wilson has declared an interest in this item. This also applies to Councillor Ward as well. They will be retiring from the meeting just for this item. I'd like to move a motion without notice that Councillor Efti is appointed as Vice Chairman for this item only. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mr. Wilson. All those in favour? Yep, so, okay, we have a majority on that. So if the two of you would like to just leave for this meeting, thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Efti. And now over to Mike Stranks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is to a site you can see in the bold line here. It's Grove Road extends along this top here is this envelope of school buildings, Clarence Road to the west of the site, and Warwick Road and Warwick Green to the south of the application area. If members see this site in March this year, it's an application, as you can see from the description, for a multi-use games area, Muga or AstroTurf, if you like, facility for the existing school. If we could see the allocations plan, please. Chairman, you'll see that the green colouring on this plan is the green belt, and the school sits in an area of just allocation of for school purposes, but the playing field is also in the green belt, so that the school ownership, if you like, or the school whole site is split between the buildings not being in the green belt and the playing field area where the words you see Grove and Primary, where the site of the proposed pitch is actually located in the green belt. If we could jump back to 03, please. As I said earlier, the site you'll see here, the smaller area, bold outlined, is the location of the pitch. If we could jump to the aerial view, we have a directly overhead shot we see here of the proposed layout. There's a number of pitches playing both crossways and in different directions, as well as the full size, because the pitch proposed gives various capability for different types of games and sports. But this gives a useful location of the proposed facility in relation to the adjoining gardens we see here in Clarence Road and Warwick Green to the south. To get our bearings on site, if you recall, we were able to walk around the perimeter footpath in the school grounds, and it's inside that distance, about 8 metres or so here, and I think it's 11 or 12 in that direction. It's not square to the boundary because the boundary skews away, hence why there's a skewing relationship to the site. If we could see the position plan, which I think just repeats what I was saying. No, this is useful actually, Chairman, shows the access into the pitch. There is a club that uses the site on a Saturday morning, and like ourselves, when we visited the site, you can come into the car park here and journey through to the site in that position. If we could jump to the elevations, please. Chairman, the pitch itself is enclosed by a 3-metre high mesh fence. And here we also see on this elevation some slight reforming of the ground. Although the pitch is sort of flat, there's a gentle slope through the site, and of necessity they would have to what we call cut and fill. Take some soil away, redistribute it to level the site up, compact it. But there's an amount of spoil. If we jump to the next plan, I think it's 09. There we see at the end of the proposal, the surplus cut soil, if you like, will be redistributed in this area in mounds. At the high point, it's over, I think, 0.4 something of a metre, less than half a metre in height. And around the toe of the mounding, you'll see there is drainage to capture any runoff, take it into the drainage system and connect to the school drains. You'll also see that the pitch itself has a series of drains through it, and then the slight slope, very slight slope, to allow for drainage with these orange arrows to show you the approximate direction of flow. As I say, if we go to the section plan, please, 08, there's been some views expressed about how these are constructed, and you'll see that the resultant surface is dug in with the drains that I was referring to. There's then a what we call a type 3 gravel grade mix that goes over the top. Then you'll see that there's a thinner aggregate over the top of that. Then there is a layer of macadam, and then there's a pad proposed. Now, we've asked the applicant about this, and they've confirmed today that it's made by something that's called SBR, which is styrene butadiene rubber. It's granules basically from recycled tyres. The process is that the tyres are machined and ground down. The steel wire that you find in the tyres is taken away, the dust and other impurities, so you get more or less clean rubber that is put on the site and then bound with a granule. And that takes maybe a day or two, depending on the weather conditions, to form solid. And then over the top of that is the playing, what they call the playing carpet, the actual turf that people would play on. The life roughly of the pad is about 20 years, which they say is 2 carpet lives. So they would expect the playing surface, depending on wear and tear and conditions, to last, say, 10 years or thereabouts. If we then jump to Plan 09, please. This is as I said before, the approximate layout, and that gives you the context. With the exception of a long-standing 15-year arrangement that the school has had with Rayleigh Boys to use this on a Saturday morning, or to use their existing pitches on a Saturday morning, the proposed pitch is for the purposes of the school. They work to hours at 7:15 to 6 p.m. in the evening, 7:15 in the morning to 6 p.m. in the evening, which allows for preschool clubs and after-school activities. And from time to time, if the Rayleigh users can't, the Rayleigh Boys, you can't use it on a Saturday morning because of waterlogging on the pitch, they'd be expected perhaps to use this instead. But currently they use part of the school playing field on a Saturday morning. That arrangement would maintain. The proposal equates to an appropriate facility for outdoor sport in the green belt. We mentioned at the beginning of this that the site, or this part of the site, is allocated green belt. Green belt policy allows permission to be granted in principle for recreational uses, for outdoor sport, uses like that we see from time to time at this committee. So on that basis, it wouldn't be termed inappropriate development, and hence the way that officers are recommending. You'll see on conditions 3 and 4 of the recommendation that we're limiting the use to more or less as it has been so far, and a condition about lighting. Although lighting columns usually require permission in their own right, the case officer has anticipated there might be some use of portable lighting. So to cover that, where you might not have expected to see a lighting condition, there's one in this case. The impact in amenity terms is if you think that the school playing field can be used by the school for activities, those activities wouldn't change. You'll still see children playing out there, the background ambient noises. There might be some intensity in use because obviously the flexibility that this site allows might generate that particular area used a little more often than it would be if it was grass, particularly in winter periods when it might be a bit waterlogged and therefore they can't play on it without wearing it out. But the report you'll see generally argues that with some modifications or adaptations, you'll see the point about the way the fence is fixed, certain types of fixing to the posts which reduces noise. Those matters are the subject of a planning condition. The fencing is required, obviously, to stop errant balls falling all around the playing field and then people treading in mud from the field onto the surface. But there's also been, we're told by the applicants, occasions where there's been abuse of the school field, people getting in there after school hours, as well as animals, possibly abusing the pitch as well. So it's the necessity to contain the balls, to keep the site in reasonable condition and to make it secure, they need to have fencing. Now, in drainage terms, there's been some issues raised about that. It sits in a hollow. There's a general drainage movement of water that flows through the site, and it identifies what we call a critical drainage area because of that. The applicants are conscious of that, hence why they've undertook the drainage that you can see in this diagram that would connect to the existing school system and would have a restrictor in it, like you see on some of the residential schemes, whereby the water is held back and can only force through a certain sized opening, whatever the amount of volume of water behind it. So it's a slow release idea. That means when the storm abates, the water can still continue to trickle away rather than rush into the system, which all these things are designed to avoid. In conclusion, Chairman, the applicants have addressed the concerns that arose from members back in January. The officer report is extensive and detailed, and I don't begin to try and summarise all of that here for you tonight. There are a number of issues raised about health concerns, and that as officers we're not able to advise. These are, some medics wouldn't even be able to tell you it's a specialist thing. To my mind, the issue is perhaps that similar to what we found many years ago in mobile phones. There are concerns, there's a lot of information on the internet, there are people worried. We're not in a position as officers to help you with that. With the mobile phone system, you'll recall the government commissioned a QC to hear various specialist views, culminated in the Stewart report that then fed into the advice and the legislation that we currently work to. That's on mobile phones. But it didn't stop planning permission being granted, because normally the products and things that are used in this process are separately licensed or governed by traded standards. The only problem we have is that the only opportunity people get to express these concerns is through the planning system, because everything else is dealt with in public inquiries or specialist things. So it's perhaps somewhat understandable why some issues have been raised like this, but I think it's for members to determine what weight they give to these things based on what we see in the report, where we've done our best to set all the issues out clearly for you. On the addendum, members will see that there's further representations, that the case officer has replied comment to that. The recommendation is therefore approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you. We have two public speakers on this item. The first speaker is Mr. Green. Mr. Green is speaking in support of the application. Please take your place at the microphone. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name's Richard Green.
Sorry,
I'll probably do it without it. Good evening. My name's Richard Green and I'm head teacher at Grovewood Primary School. I'm going to begin by stating that our application to install a multi-use games area aligns directly with the vision and aims of Rochford District Council's playing pitch strategy published in November 2018, which in its 20-year objectives states that it aims to create a district that puts the health and well-being of its residents at its heart, enabling and empowering its communities to become healthier and more active by providing greater opportunities for recreation and exercise, better facilities, and a higher standard for sport and leisure provision from grassroots to elite. At the previous Development Committee meeting in January, a number of questions were raised which led to the deferral of a decision being made regarding Grovewood's application. In this meeting and on the portal, a number of assumptions and statements were made and anecdotes shared by local residents, councillors and members of the committee, which, without challenge or redress, which were factually incorrect or perpetuated mistruths about the proposed scope of the project. Subsequently, through discussion, these were accepted as being fact and led to discussions on matters that did not constitute material planning considerations. So for the sake of clarity, the Muga was never proposed to be a 3G rubber crumb pitch or a water-based pitch. It was always designed to be a second-generation sand dress pitch, which could be used for a wide range of activities and sports and to provide an all-weather alternative when the field is unusable. Sand dress pitches have been in use for decades, specifically for tennis and hockey, and do not fall under the recent EU ban on microplastics, which is specifically linked to the use of recycled tyres as 3G crumb infill. Neither the UK or the EU has proposed a total ban on artificial grass. In January's meeting, some key questions were raised leading to the decision to defer, and I'll address these in turn. With regard to drainage, further technical information has been submitted to the lead local flood authority, which has raised no objection, and they have been approved by them. The scheme follows all sustainable drainage principles in accordance with all national and local SUDS guidance. As a result of the proposal, there will be no flood increase off-site, as Grovewood is the victim, not the perpetrator of flooding due to its geographical location. And the lead flood authority, the competent authority, have approved the scheme with the standard condition that the 3 pre-commencement conditions are satisfied and the information checked by the LLFA. They have clarified that it's not possible to progress this further until approval is granted. A technical document posted to the portal states that the surface poses no harm to man or environment. In addition, Sport England, as a statutory body, has made no comment on the proposed surface, which it would have done if it held any concerns with regard to the safety of all the proposed materials. I once again draw members' attention to the fact that this is a sand dress pitch and contains no loose rubber crumb. This has been a common misconception. To address the necessity for fencing, it's principally there to serve 2 purposes. Primarily, it is there to keep balls within the enclosure, maintaining the integrity of the surface, and secondly, for security reasons, to prevent unauthorised access at all other times, as there have been previous issues with trespass on occasions from adjoining neighbours accessing the school premises for their own purposes. A full and thorough noise impact assessment was commissioned and carried out by DB Consultation Limited in April, and the report issued in July. This report clearly states that the noise levels generated by the proposed Muga, including the fence, would be no greater than the noise already generated by current use of the field, and recognises that the noise of organised PE and sport is significantly lower than the noise of free play, which already takes place in the designated area. Our plans meet all of the conditions specified by Martin Howlett of RDC in his email of the 20th of August. ARBTEC's ecological assessment commissioned by the school was published to the portal in June. This report clearly identifies that the biodiversity of the site would not be compromised in any way by the development. Suggestions made as precautionary measures will be implemented, but the report makes clear that there are no sets or other protected habitats present which could be affected. With regard to the use of the Muga, Grovewood have on a number of occasions in writing clearly identified that the typical times of use would be between 7:15 a.m. and 6 p.m. We have also agreed to the condition restricting weekend use of the Muga to a sole Saturday morning let. Having sought advice, we understand that the imposition of further restrictions on use would be ultra vires, as these would go beyond the permissions and freedoms that already exist to make use of our own facilities for the benefit of our children and the purposes of our school. I'd like to thank you for providing me with the opportunity to both respond to the points raised at the previous meeting and to provide factual, accurate details about the background, rationale and scope of the application for a facility that we believe would significantly enhance the sporting opportunities and wider health and well-being of the pupils of Grovewood Primary.
Thank you, Mr. Green. You return to your seat. Second speaker is Mrs. Balding, who is objecting to the application on behalf of residents. Mrs. Balding, please take your seat. You have 5 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a 1-minute warning when you come towards the end. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dawn Balding. I'm a resident and I'm representing over 170 residents who have signed a petition. We are the parents, the grandparents, the guardians and supporters of this school, and we strongly object to this application. We are here for the children and to defend the protection of their health and the environment. The reason for this application is, I quote, "A small section does get muddy in winter, and yet despite the recent extreme weather, this playing field has been in constant use." The school has allocated over £250,000 for this, for a plastic carpet filled with silica sand covering over half this playing field. This is an inappropriate development and destruction of Greenbelt. Exceptions are only allowed as long as they preserve the openness. This doesn't, with a 3-metre high fence, and fences are not included as exceptions and therefore are harmful to the Greenbelt. This is a primary school and has the privilege of being custodians of publicly funded land. This is not a sports centre. This is not for community use. It is a place of learning for under 11s with a playing field. This school is already outstanding and has everything and more for a primary school in this county. Public health is a material consideration. This is a risk to the children's health, as they will be exposed to microplastics and silica dust. The impact and pollution from microplastics is deeply concerning for everyone. This is a carpet made of synthetic yarns filled with silica sand, fibres that will break down into the soil and water systems in the form of microplastics. The Synthetic Trade Council admits that yarn loss is considered a secondary microplastic, and there will be loss of microfibres into this environment. The manufacturers acknowledge that silica dust is a risk to children's health. It can cause asthma, and it is known carcinogen that can cause cancer. Scientific research has reported that chemicals leaching from plastic particles are absorbed into tissues and body fluids, and microplastic pollution has been detected in human blood for the first time. DEFRA are now reviewing emissions of microplastics. This will inform all future laws in the UK. The European Commission have banned the use of microplastics in artificial pitches. According to their research, fields with artificial grass are the largest source of microplastics that are released into the environment. Sport England also says there are concerns over the environmental impact of artificial pitches and the fibre loss of the microplastics. And closer to home, Rochford District Council have declared a climate and ecological emergency, a commitment to becoming carbon neutral by 2030. Plastic grass has a sizable carbon footprint. One plastic lawn is equivalent to using hundreds of thousands of plastic straws. Can you even begin to imagine 2,600 square metres of this plastic carpet? This will increase your carbon footprint exponentially. Essex County Council have confirmed they do not promote the use of artificial grass. Their climate report says it. The environmental officer has confirmed it. The flood risk officers have also confirmed it. Compared to natural grass, well, plastic grass contributes to flooding. It overheats to extreme temperatures. 34% of more friction burns and injuries are caused. It needs cleaning with chemicals. It only has approximately 6 years lifespan and cannot easily be recycled in the UK. It does destroy biodiversity that cannot be replaced. Natural grass, it's safe. It takes up carbon dioxide, it releases oxygen, acting as an air filter, and it is the green lungs of this community. For a small area that gets muddy, rather than covering up half of this field in plastic with a cage, the most basic, the most cost-effective solution is really simple: upgrading the existing drainage. That's it. Job done. As a country, we recognise that there is a plastic transformation taking place. We do not want to become part of this toxic legacy. We love where we live. We love our children. We must protect their health and their future, setting examples by our actions and not destroying this natural environment. We put our faith in you to refuse this application on the grounds of our health, environment, and the Greenbelt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Balding. Ward members, we have 3 ward members and they are Councillor Ward, who's obviously recused himself already, Councillor Lambourne and Councillor Milne. Do any of those ward members wish to speak? Would you like to come to the microphone, please? Thank you, Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Chairman. I haven't prepared a precise speech, but being involved in this from the first time the application was put forward to the council, I was in receipt of photographs of that flooded field and flooded gardens. And I've actually visited the site on the development committee visit, saw children playing all over the field, and in the area which is nearest the housing, there was water collected, and it was actually quite sodden the ground. And it already has a mound of earth all around it from previous drainage works. One thing that is of concern is that the actual topography of this field seems to go uphill from where the adjoining areas to the houses. And what I don't see in the drainage plan is any form of water storage or pumping to take it out of there. And the fact that they're going to make an even larger mound at the back, it made me read some advice from the industry about installing this type of surface. So I'm not talking about 2G, 3G, we're talking about artificial grass with drainage under it. It says no matter how many drainage holes and how you do it, it will only do the job properly if the ground is well prepared. And I'm quite pleased that the council has got, I think it's conditions 6 and 7, some others to do with the drainage that are in there. But what the industry says is synthetic turf has got a drain field and will improve any type of drainage that already exists and works well. But if there's a previous problem, the process will worsen it. And the client, if they're asked, does the water drain well? In this case, it does not. It's a hollow where water collects. Then what then happens is water can remain stagnant for several days underneath that surface. So I don't see the words pumping in here. I see a consultant who talks about a culvert that no one can find. And I know for a fact that the ditches adjoining that school, owing to the flood forum at this council, were dug out in recent years, but before that, they're almost up to ground level and non-existent. So how do we know what's going to happen in the future? Now, there is another concern. I know it's a 2G pitch. The actual chemicals that are in the grass itself, the artificial grass, the polypropylene and other substances, but there's quite a list of chemicals quoted on the internet that's present just in that material that's going to be run about on by hundreds of children and will break down. So there's no doubt that material will come out of it. Added to that, it's like a carpet, and unless it's vacuumed or kept clean somehow or other, what tends to happen is detritus collects in it, and sportsmen have had injuries with streptococcus infections and so on caused by having injuries or skin injuries on this type of material. And more worryingly, I thought, well, it's going to be sand under it, no problem with that. Now I find out that it's recycled tyre material, but it's not in crumb form that is underneath that yet again, which is going to be subject to wear. So what happens to this material? Remember, we have declared a climate and ecological emergency. That's what happens to this stuff. There's thousands of tons of it once it's finished 6 years from now, 10 years from now, piled up in enormous sites. It has to go to landfill. It's very difficult to deal with. And there we are propagating it. For the amount of money they're spending, could they not have looked at the levels of that land, looked at the drainage of it, taken it up and adjusted all of that and dealt with it in a much more sustainable way? And the jury is still out on artificial grass in Europe, and there are class actions in America looking at the deaths of professional athletes who've been working on this type of material or playing on it professionally for years, suffering. In Philadelphia, 6 of them have got the same type of brain cancer. So the jury is out on this. But at the end of the day, we know grass is safe. We know we can adjust levels and drainage. Do we need to put in this material? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milne. Councillor Lambourne, do you want to speak on this matter? Please take the seat. As with everyone else, you have 5 minutes, and I'll give you the nod when you come to a minute left.
Sorry. When I first came across this application, I was very interested as I was a founder pupil of Grove School all of nearly 65 years ago, and I well remember this field being a pudding made of Essex clay and not very usable. Often between November and April, and it would appear from the need for this application that still applies. The idea of upgrading the existing fields drainage must have come up in the past, but because of the lay of the land, I guess the water just continues to run down and makes the whole area a pudding. I did have a lot of other stuff written down to say, but what I would say is we've heard a lot of quotes from people who have done a few clicks and searches on the internet, and I find that if you look long enough, you'll find something to support whatever you want to believe. In this case, I would prefer to the members follow the guidance given to them by professionals rather than worrying about what somebody in Ohio might have thought about this or that. So I would ask that when you consider this yourselves and have your own discussions, you limit yourselves purely to the facts and not loads of hypothesis. I don't envy your deliberations on this because it is a difficult subject, but there are two sides. The residents do have a very cogent view, and they are correct in some of what they say, but also we must remember we're talking about the health of children, not going to what we've discussed with pathogens and all sorts of that. We're just talking about their physical health. Children need time to play, do things, physical activity, and the idea from the school is to improve that. So I'm not going to make a recommendation to you, but I would just say you've got to bear in mind both sides of the argument. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lambourne. Now, before we get into debate, I'm sure every member here will have been bombarded by emails with regards to this application. I certainly have. I will say that I have read every one that has come to me, but I feel it would be wrong of the council at this stage not to actually listen to our legal counsel, which we have Tom Newcombe with us, and I've asked him before we debate just to give the legal view from the council point of view so as we know what basis we're working from. So Tom, over to you, please.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. I don't have an awful lot to say, and forgive me if I'm teaching you to suck eggs because some of you will have been on this committee for some time, but obviously what you need to do from a legal point of view is make a decision in accordance with planning law. And so Section 38(6) of the 2004 Planning Act determines that you need to make these applications in accordance with the relevant policies of the development plan, unless there are material considerations that indicate otherwise. Some of the issues, or all of the issues that we've heard so far this evening and are dealt with in the report are capable of being material considerations. Impact on the green belt, drainage, and impact on physical health and well-being. You've got a very detailed report in front of you, which I'm sure you've all read, and there's also been various pieces of evidence that have been presented to you as part of this application. So your job is to consider what weight to place on that information and that evidence. And that is a matter for you as to what weight you will give the information that you've been provided with. Ultimately, you've had professional advice in the form of your report, and that contains a recommendation, but it is only a recommendation. It's up to you to carry out the planning balance on the evidence that's presented to you as to whether or not this application should be approved or refused.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, so moving on from there, it's over to members. Councillor Mrs. Shaw.
Thank you. On the addendum, page 3, 1.6, I just want to ask the officer. It says the biodiversity net gain based on the 10% target, which is not yet activated, and this is unlikely to come into force until at least January 24. Are we rushing this application through before that comes through on January 24? I just want clarification, please.
Chairman, I wouldn't accuse it of rushing through. You'll be aware that applications are timed. So they are submitted at a certain point in time, and we should be looking to deal with this sort of thing in eight weeks. So I don't think the coincidence of this meeting against that date is somebody trying to get something dealt with ahead or whatever of legislation coming in, if that answers the query. I think there's some uncertainty about the biodiversity net gain. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just for clarification for the committee, the biodiversity net gain, the 10%, was meant to come into effect in November, as I'm sure most of the members of this committee will be aware. The government are still waiting on further information to come through to enable them to implement that legislation. And at the moment, it's anticipated that it will be January, but there is quite likely that it will be extended beyond January. We've had no further updates on that.
Thank you for the clarification.
Members, any other? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't go over the points that have been made by the other speakers, but members should really bear in mind that the field is already in use for the health and well-being of the community. And so whatever decision we take tonight, whether we agree or whether we approve or whether we refuse it, that facility will still be there. So we're not actually taking anything away, whatever we do with our decision. To give you a bit of context, I'm a qualified FA coach, and I've used the type of surface that has been proposed. And what I would say is it's not a panacea. These surfaces can flood and they can freeze over, and they can also get so hot to the point of unusability. So it's not a magic bullet that's going to solve all of the problems. I can't support the laying of an artificial surface because I believe it will permanently damage the environment. Once you lay those surfaces down, it will destroy the soil, so you can never get that back. In addition, the mass of the fencing around will actually close down the amenity of and visual appearance of the Metropolitan Greenbelt, and for me that's a no-go, so I won't be able to support this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I'll try not to repeat anything because I know you don't like that. However, I will have to go in on the surface of the pitch again. We have been told it isn't rubber crumb in the same way as a 3G pitch is, but we are told it is the pad is made up of recycled tyres, which may not be in the same format as crumb. So there is a certain amount of that rubber which will get into the ecosystem, if you like. Again, the top of the pitch, although it might be dressed in sand, which was emphasised quite a lot by the headmaster, there are still, the blades are still made of plastic. I think it's polypropylene that I read about it. However, before I go any further, I just want to read something from Sport England Sport England seem rather confused about their own policies at the moment. Sport England issued a position statement on plastic pitches in April 2023. It mentions about 3G, but this relates to all artificial grass pitches. And this is, I hate you use the word grass, it's plastic pitch. So it talks about artificial grass pitches are recognised as a durable, safe year-round playing surface, which we all understand. It goes on in the next paragraph to say, however, concerns have been raised about the environmental impact of these pitches. Most commonly, this relates to the fibre loss of microplastics, which is in this case the surface and potentially the rubber. It talks about rubber crumb, but this is a slightly different rubber. They're also aware of the potential developments in the EU following the European Commission statement, which was released in September 22. They have concerns of it, which it would appear that the people we spoke to at Sport England weren't aware of within this report. In addition, I'd like to add that we as a council have declared a climate and ecological emergency. In addition to that, we have, as a council, been instructed by the administration to urgently develop a policy on 3G and plastic pitches, which is in progress. I mean, started, but in progress. So I feel that this is quite awkward for us because obviously this is a situation where we're developing a policy. There's clear indications that there are health risks with this, we believe, which is not something we've read off the internet. This is the European Commission, Sport England are also worried about this, and there is certainly a ban coming in. I've got concerns about the pad. I've got concerns around the end, how it's dealt with as end of life. We talk about recycling. It's not really possible to recycle it very easily. Potentially it'll go to landfill. And most of all, as I've said, I've got real concerns about these microplastics ending up in the ecosystem around the school. That's what I'm going to say on that. The next point is the one I think at the previous meeting I mentioned this about the fence. The fence has to have planning permission. It is in the green belt and it is 3 metres tall. On page 7.13, at the top of that page, we've got the effect on the openness of the green belt. Obviously, this is where the fence is mentioned. This is a 3 metre, as far as we can read, close-knit fence, which will have an effect on the openness of the green belt. It cannot do anything but. And I don't believe that there are special circumstances or very special circumstances, sorry, I'll get my words right. I don't believe the very special circumstances have been outweighed by the need of the fence. The playing pitch could be perfectly used.
Sorry, could I ask whoever's got their phone going in the audience there to turn that off, please? Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't hear that, Chairman.
A minute to go.
So again, I still have concerns around the fence. I don't think the fence, I don't agree with the fence, put it that way. They're the main points. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any others members wishing to speak? Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been a lot said about the health risks of this pitch, and it mentions sports stars being exposed to it. The majority of the children will be playing on this pitch will be for a period of probably 45 minutes, once, maybe twice a week. So the risks to the children is not the same as a professional athlete that may be training and working on this pitch all the time. So I can see this as a big benefit to the school and to the health of the children and their sporting abilities. And I don't have a problem with supporting this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members wish to comment? Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to check with officers on condition 9. In that condition, if members were minded to approve this, would that condition also include having the logs of maintenance available for inspection by the LPA? Because it says in there about maintenance activities and frequencies, but a lot has been said about flooding and drainage, but we would actually need to reassure ourselves that the site was properly being maintained and those logs are available. So that's one question for officers. The other just point I'd like to make really is quite a lot has been said about health implications or possible health implications. We don't know. In my mind, a football match is 90 minutes, so I don't know if children will play on it for 90 minutes, but it's very inconclusive, the evidence that we've been presented here. But the same goes for other applications that we've looked at in the past where health implications have been raised. So I think it's a very important issue for members to think about. These are young people, very young people, developing lungs, and I, for one, don't want to play Russian roulette with their health.
Thank you. Any more comments from anyone? Oh, sorry, Mike Strange, do you want to come back first, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Depending how this goes, if members were to move approval, then that move would require, perhaps from the, if members agree, that condition 9 be varied to include, as we often see with other recommended conditions, that the maintenance schedule be made available from time to time for inspection. That can be done.
Councillor Linden.
Hello, yes, I just want to clarify from Mike Stranks, did you actually say that you're not able to supply us with the information regarding the health elements and the dangers?
Chairman, you'll know I don't do things briefly. The brief answer is we can't. I've done my best to read much of what I've seen that's been exchanged and submitted to members, and thinking that members would expect of me to be able to say, well, is this right or is this wrong? Not being a medical specialist, I can't tell you. I note that the material that you've been submitted, some of it says the so-and-so organisation have found this, which might give that particular point credibility. Other points that you see look like they're just like quotes on paper, they're not necessarily been sourced. So members have to choose what weight they give to those comments. But as a planner of several years' experience, I can't tell you what those health risks are. I'm not qualified. I have no better idea than you do as to whether something will result in people getting cancer or will not. In my presentation, I alluded to we had a similar problem many years ago with the mobile phones, and the government took that issue away, examined it, and helped councils clarify this matter. What they actually did, they introduced something called an ICNIRP certificate, which means that if the kit complies with the government testing that it's okay, it's then safe for members of councils to be approving. So all the applications you've seen since have all been accompanied with an ICNIRP certificate. That's an industry government thing. It wasn't something that we could deal with as a council. And I think we're on the verge of something similar here, where there's a lot of interest and concerns and anxiety about these issues that are being reported. We perhaps don't know who to trust, which is one hell of a dilemma for members here and now. But I can't, as a planning professional, confirm or otherwise those health risks.
Thank you for the clarity on that, Mike. Much appreciated. Did I have anyone else who wanted to speak on the matter? Councillor Brewer.
Thank you, Chair. Again to Mike, have we got any evidence? I'm sorry if I haven't seen it in the report. I think one of the speakers has actually mentioned it, and I've found this in different areas I've been looking at, that the actual turf does freeze in the winter. The water can be retained, so it will freeze over, and it does retain snow, and in the summer it doubles in heat. Do we have any evidence in there that you can advise on, please?
Chairman, I don't have any evidence, but I've played on such services in snow. So I think it depends, like anything else. There's a period of time when the snow takes time to clear, or like we were doing, we were brushing it off so we could play. So it does sit like it does on any surface. But the spec that we've been given in this application, they say that it is porous. There was some debate about the fact that it has a tar macadam layer, and I'm not specialist in that, but if the spec says it is porous, hence the drains beneath, then in period of snow, there would be a period of melt, which would no doubt seep through. Some of it might be removed by caretakers or players or whatever, so they can get on with their game. I think I see something somewhere else in the particulars that in strong storms, they probably wouldn't play. The game would be called off, even though it's AstroTurf. So they do capture water because they're a surface. And like any surface, there's a period of time, whether it be rain or snow, that it dissipates away. They also get hot because of the nature, like anything in the hot weather, like we saw this summer with some of the extreme temperatures, things that are man-made warm up. So you do have a heat problem, perhaps. You do have a drainage issue where they capture it. The people who manufacture these try to deal with that as best they can. But the extremes will always present either piles of snow or possibly a hot surface.
Thank you, Mike. You want to come back?
Just going back to the heat subject, I mean, what I've been reading is it becomes unbearably hot and it can burn. Is this what you're saying? It's therefore they wouldn't be able to use the pitches at these times?
I think, Chairman, it would be up for whoever's running the event. You know, we see sometimes with grass pitches that matches are called off because the pitch is frozen. We have sometimes man-made, like cars. You touch a car in the extreme weather, you can perhaps burn yourself. The desert rats used to fry eggs on their Land Rovers in the war. If you've got a man-made material, the temperature of the day will affect it. And I think if you've got children being exposed to the heat, it's perhaps down to the management of the game or the school activity to perhaps have a look first and say, we won't play on that today, it's too hot, there might be a risk of burns. I'm not sure it would be something for this committee to get into as to whether, if granting permission will result in burns, because the planning issues are the provision of the facility and the issues that have been talked about. The actual health consequences of the likelihood of obtaining a burn, I don't think are a planning question, but I can't rule out that if somebody was to touch the surface on an exceptionally hot day, they might get burnt. So similarly, if it was icy conditions, they could fall over and hurt themselves, just like they can on other surfaces. When we played rugby, with regular breaks, if these, it's only the rugger guys that were out playing on the footballers were inside. So, it's down to whoever's running the management of the game or the practice session as to whether they, I think, deem it safe, rather than the planning decision.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Hoy.
Sorry, Chairman, just wanted to come back because I probably didn't phrase it very well as a question, but I mentioned about the recycled tyres used as a pad, and I just wanted, if Mr. Stranks knew how different they are to the rubber crumb used in 3G pitches. I'm not sure we have an answer for that.
Chairman, I actually own two of them. I have a special use for them on a trailer to stop the load bouncing, because the pad is a shock absorber. The upside down of it is like an egg box. So it's a congealed material, and those I've had 3 or 4 years. I haven't seen them break off, but they're used only occasionally. But I think it's because of the chemicals that are involved, the resins and everything else. I think that may be limiting the recycling. There's certain things we chuck in our bins which can't be recycled. There's other things that can, because there's a process for recycling them. But if it does result in piles of a material that has no other use, whether they can't use it in road making or it has to go to landfill, as you've heard tonight, that's a consequence of this material. It exists because it's a reuse of, it's a second life to some of the material that's already been used, say, in the making of tyres. So it can be used, like people like me who might have a certain need for it, use it as a weight or something in other things, on tarpaulins. But if it does result in mountains of this thing to landfill, that is a consequence, but it's already been used once.
Thank you.
Sorry,
one
Chairman,
last comeback.
It was just to come back, because I think what I was trying to get at was that this material that is proposed for this mugger, as they're calling it, would still deteriorate and get into the ecosystem as in the same way as a rubber crumb would, or maybe a different rates as a rubber crumb, but still do that.
I don't have any information, Chairman, on the deterioration rate. The ones I'm familiar with are solid, unless you go and physically break something off. I think the issue that's been rehearsed around the rubber crumb is like you see in horse marges or surfaces where it's spread on the top to allow bounce or playing activity, and when it's rained off, that's when it enters the system. Or like other people have been saying, if you've got the blades that because of wear, they become dust and so forth. But the sub layer is buried between the plain carpet. So it's not so exposed to the direct heat or the weathers that the top surface would be.
Thank you. Okay, unless we have any other new members' comments on that, I'd like to just sum up. Okay, so as I said when we first started this debate, I have had a mountain of emails and submissions to myself about this issue. I have read every one, and I have to comment on one thing that I found rather disturbing, in that some of the language used was quite inflammatory and quite regrettable, let me say. We're talking about this particular pitch being 2G. A lot of the furore that's actually come up around these kind of pitches is around 3G. And a lot of the emotion that has come up out of this has been because of the issues around 3G pitches. And in reading a lot of the emails that have come to me, there's a lot of emotion that has come around this. And there is a danger in that, because you become emotionally involved and you become intransigent in your particular way, whether it be for or against. Sport England, they did put out a statement about a couple of weeks ago saying that following the EU directive, that they were looking at 3G pitches. But our officers have, as a result of that, they have contacted Sport England again to ask for their opinion as to whether they would change their mind based on that, on this particular type of pitch. They have come back and they have said categorically no. So they are not condemning this particular type of pitch. When it comes to Greenbelt, this particular area of land is a sports playing area. It's not going to change. It's still going to be a sports playing area. So then it becomes an issue of balance. And that is what we as a committee are commissioned to do. We are commissioned to look at the fors and against, and we are asked to draw a balanced conclusion from it. The one thing that I've gleaned from the information that is coming is that there would be a lot more opportunities for the pupils in the school to explore other sports and to be able to do them in different times of the year. Now, for whatever you think about putting grass in and using that all year round, in a school environment, from what I read, that's quite impractical. So on balance, how do we look at this? This is a 2G pitch, not a 3G pitch. The drainage has been dealt with in the report and in subsequent items that the school have had to get done in reports additionally. The health issue, we have to have a balance here. Now, is there more health through getting our kids outside at times when they would be sitting inside in front of their screens, learning how to do other sports? It's a balance. The school itself, we've heard, are an outstanding school. They are looking to promote things that are going to keep that standard. They're going to put these pupils in a position where they do have the extra ability to do sports, to be outside, to be in the fresh air. For myself, I look at it on balance. Now, I, for one, am very, very keen on anything that actually promotes a green issue. What is actually happening under the proposals here is that the biodiversity is actually likely to be increased with some of the stuff that's being put in. It is. I find it very strange that people say that there is biodiversity that is going to be lost on a pitch which is basically going to be mud. And then you look at situations where there are trees that are going to be put in, and they will promote a lot of biodiversity. On balance, I look at it and I think that we need to actually take notice of what our officers have actually brought in front of us. And we need to be aware that if we are going to refuse this particular application, that we need to be on solid ground in our refusal. And that means we need to be absolutely sure that if this goes to appeal, that it won't be lost. So with that in mind, I think we will now go to the vote.
Sorry, on a point of order, Chairman, could I just say, are you saying that we should be voting on the basis of whether or not this will go to appeal?
No, absolutely
Can you make
not.
that clear then?
No,
Because
absolutely not.
To
I'm
me,
going to make that.
my ears heard something different, and I'm glad you.
No,
Right.
I am not saying that at all, but I do say that we do need to take notice of what our officers have actually recommended. So with the respect to the recommendation is to approve the application subject to the conditions set out in pages 7.2 to 7.5 of the report. Can members in favour? Yeah, I'm going to move it from the chair for acceptance. Do I have a seconder? Sorry, I have Mr. Stranks wants to come in or something.
Chairman, forgive the interruption. I don't know if this vote includes the amendment to condition 9 suggested by Councillor Newport.
If we approve it, yes. So that will have to be part of the amendment that Councillor Newport has asked for. Can you just clarify what that amendment is, please, Councillor Newport?
That logs of maintenance be included for inspection by the LPA for the flood surface water.
Right, we need to take a vote to get that added for a start off. So those in favour of the amendment, please, can we have a seconder, sorry, first? So Mr. Newport, you're proposing it, seconder, Councillor FD. Those in favour, please indicate. Okay. Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That amendment is passed. So now we go on to the substantial recommendation. I will recommend from the chair that we approve the application subject to the conditions set out on pages 7.2 to 7.5 of the report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Constable. Okay, those in favour? Those against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Thank you.
Chair, could I have my vote recorded, please?
Certainly.
Thank you.
And Councillor Hoy as well wants his vote recorded. Thank you. Abstentions? Okay, that application is refused. Thank you. Sorry, hang on a minute, just a minute, sorry. Right, sorry, I do apologise. That now needs to go to reasons for refusal. Right, I need a member to move a recommendation for refusal. Do I have a, okay, Councillor Hoy.
Thank you. I'll take the hot seat. Refusal, reason number 1. Inappropriateness of the 3 metre high fence not outweighing the special circumstances of Greenbelt development.
That's number one, yeah.
Is that okay? Just making sure that the officers are happy with that, with the wording. Secondly, this is a more difficult one to word, obviously, but with regard to emerging council policy and MPPF paragraph 92, which refers to health and safety of users, that the use of artificial plastic, the use of the rubber pad, the use of the macadam underlay pose problems with the breakdown of those materials into the ecosystem.
Chairman, I've been notified.
Point of
by
order, Mr. Chairman.
They can't hear.
Point of order, though. You can't have something against a policy that doesn't exist. If you haven't got a policy, how can you say something is against that policy if it doesn't exist?
So on a matter of Chairman, I'm sure emerging policy is perfectly valid within the local plan.
I'm being advised that it's not. So I think you need to revise your, can I just refer to our legal representative, please?
Do we actually have an emerging policy? I'm not aware that there actually is one yet.
It depends what you call by emerging. There is a local plan which is emerging, and there's the initial meeting has taken place between officers, and there's been a report done by one of the officers around artificial grass pitches, and it's been referred to the climate committee. So I would suggest that is emerging.
I personally, as a legal representative, I would advise against referring to that. It sounds as though it's in an extremely early stage, and therefore I would say very little weight could be placed on the emerging policy. That doesn't mean that your reason for refusal couldn't be crafted in a different way, but I don't think referring to a policy at that much of an early stage would be acceptable.
That's fine then, thank you. I would take out the reference to emerging policy. So the refusal on the basis of health grounds, on the basis of the breakdown of the known breakdown of the polyethylene, which I believe it is made of, on the surface, the rubber tyre pad and the macadam underlay, together with silica sand, in relation, I believe it is MPPF 90, paragraph 92, which it says health and safety. So I'm taking, I mean, some of the health and safety is about other things other than the physical health caused by these things, but I'm suggesting that's why I'm putting it on those bases.
Okay, I believe Mike Stranks
wants
to come back.
Chairman, just briefly, we're like University Challenge up here working on an answer, but to help you with the policy and emerging issue, okay, in planning, the policy gains weight, and hopefully Phil will correct me if I'm wrong, and gravitas, the more processes it's gone through to adoption. So if you're at a very early stage of your local plan, like we are, I don't know, unless Phil tells me otherwise, if we're much beyond the call for sites. As regards of drafting policies that have then been put out to consultation, and then you've had feedback from that consultation that takes it to other stages, if that feedback from the community or whatever and the professionals out there doesn't change or necessitate the change to the text or only part of that text, that policy starts to survive the various stages that it goes through. And the more stages it's gone through, the more weight that you can give it. Now, if this policy perhaps hasn't been to committee, I don't know. It's not a planning policy, I don't believe. If it's a corporate policy, it has perhaps less weight than your planning policies. So I mean, your hands as to what the origins of this are and how far it's gone. If it's an idea, then great idea as that may be, in planning, it has a lot less weight than, if you like, your local policies.
Thank you. I'd removed the part referring to emerging policies. So I was referring to the MPPF paragraph 92, which is around health and safety. It uses the words to make sure the places are safe and accessible, by safe, so they are safe to use. I'm saying that they're not safe to use. healthy lifestyles. I don't believe that these can be healthy. It is quite clear. I can state it again that the degradation of the polyethylene on the top surface, the rubber infill pad, and the macadam underlying that will degrade and will affect the health of the users, and will get into the ecosystem and affect the health of other people that way. We've been told that we've been told at the beginning of this by Tom Newcombe that that was a valid reason. There was nothing not valid, and we're putting a lot of weight on that. I'm using the NPPF paragraph 92 for that.
Can we just be concise on the reasons for refusal? Yvonne, can I ask for clarification?
Yeah, I just want to be clear that health and safety with regards to materials that are being used in the construction of the pitch are matters that are outside of the planning legislation. It's like any building material. You know, we wouldn't be saying that, there's concrete dust can be carcinogenic, but that doesn't stop planning permission being granted for development.
Sorry, if I may interrupt, Chairman. I've proposed this on the basis that we were told by our legal advisor that all these points would be valid or could be valid. It was quite clear that this is one of the key points that had been raised within the addendum, within the report, and at our last meeting to some extent.
Okay,
So
can I
I'm
ask?
now being told it isn't a valid reason.
Yeah.
I'm
Can I
confused.
ask for Tom to actually clarify this then, please, because he's going backwards and forwards. You need to get some conclusion here.
Sorry, I think, as you can see in the NPPF, for example, impact on public health of a proposal is capable of being a material consideration. But I do agree that I think we've got to be careful here what we're actually saying, because the precise materials that might be used in any particular proposal is likely to be a matter that's outside the remit of planning and the planning officer's remit. So, for example, one might be able to consider a condition that required submission of materials to be approved by the planning officers, but the planning officers themselves under those circumstances would only be able to do that within the remit of their own expertise, which is in relation to planning, and the precise chemical composition of materials, etc., would be dealt with by other legislation. So I think I understand what you're saying, and I understand the vote that's been taken here, and the next steps that need to be taken. But I just think you need to be careful about how and why and what it is that you're drafting in terms of your reasons for refusal. So I think if you can pin those to a policy within the development plan or within the NPPF that you consider that these proposals are not in accordance with, I think that's going to be very helpful to your officers in drafting the refusal. I think members need to be clear exactly what it is. What is the reason that you are about to be asked to vote on a refusal?
Okay, thank you, Tom. So, Councillor Hoy, on that basis, then, can we have clarification on what you are suggesting as reasons for refusal?
I was taking initial advice from Tom Newcombe when he gave us the talk at the beginning of the session. I looked at the NPPF and related it to that. I have not yet related it to our own policies. I'd need to take a 5-minute pause to check our policies. I haven't got them in front of me. I normally remember many of them off the top of my head, but I can't remember the ones around this at this point, and I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, I'm minded to give you 5 minutes, and 5 minutes strictly only. Sorry, Mike, have you got something to say on that?
Chairman, listening to the conversation and looking at paragraph 92, I'd like, if members wish, to read back a reason formulated from what I've heard, if that helps things and helps yourself.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the reason we're gleaning, suggested by members, is as follows. The proposal by way of the use of plastic, recycled rubber particles, in brackets, recycled tyres, and silicate would, with wear and tear, result in particulates entering the environment, contrary to paragraph 92 of the NPPF, which seeks to provide safe and accessible green infrastructure.
Councillor Hoy, are you happy with that?
I think he says it much better than I did.
I'm happy with that from a legal point of view, provided the planning team are happy that that's an acceptable reason for refusal from a planning point of view.
We'd give it a go, Chairman. I can't promise the outcome, but listening to the debate, putting together in the context of this, it's probably something we could work with. And if you throw in the issues that the public have that have entered this issue, it has some legs, as somebody might say. But I'm not forecasting that it's robust for an outcome. Only time would tell, and it being tested. I go back to the mobile phone issues, things like this that we had years ago, same kind of process. But I think it's good enough.
Okay, thank you for your input there, Mike. Appreciate that.
Chairman, if I may add something, I'd like to thank Mike Stranks for that, but I do personally feel this is a really important matter, and I think even if we are a test case on this, I think it's important that this goes ahead.
So you're happy with the recommendation for refusal that Mike has formulated from what the conversation is, yeah?
In addition to the refusal based on the fence.
In addition to the fence. Mike.
Chair, while I was doing that, Claire's been working on the fence one, so we have a fence reason as well. Do you wish that to be read just for clarity, or?
Yes, I think that would be wise. Thank you.
So reason 2, I've read out. Reason 1, the proposal would be considered to represent inappropriate development within the green belt, contrary to paragraph 149 of the NPPF. No very special circumstances are considered to exist that would outweigh the harm to the green belt identified. The fence, sorry, did I mean that right? The first 2 words, the fence. But we've got it written down, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now, are we all clear on what those reasons for refusal are? Yes? Okay, I need a proposer.
Propose it.
Councillor Hoy, and a seconder, please. Councillor Wilson. Okay, all those in favour of the reasons for refusal, please indicate.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Thank you. All those against? Abstentions?
I'm not voting because I think this is just stupid.
Okay, that's 5 for, 3 against, 1 abstention. So the refusal is complete on that. Thank you. So at this point, we obviously have quite a full programme to go on to next. Members of the public, you are welcome to stay. I would suggest maybe a very quick 5 minutes comfort break, and I will make it strictly 5 minutes. So if you want to come back at 9 o'clock, we will reconvene then. Thank you. Sorry? Oh. Members, can we reconvene, please? We have items to get through that I want to get through as much as we can, but I am minded after the last meeting that we had that we are not going to go on anywhere near that sort of time. So please, with that in mind, do bear in mind with your comments to be concise, etc. Now, we're going back to item 6 now. Item number 7 is land east of All Saints Church and north of Arundel Road, Banbridge Road, Ashington. Katie Rogers will present the officer's report. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. So the application site is formed of 2 main parcels of land, which are located in an area of farmland north of Canewdon Road, which is at just the bottom of the screen here, and Larkhill Road, just slightly further east, and between Fanbridge Road on the west here, and to the west of Pudsey Hall Lane, that's Pudsey Hall Lane is indicated here, so it's to the west of that. Beyond neighbouring farmland to the north is the River Crouch, and the application site includes part of the highway of Fanbridge Road, Canewdon Road and Larkhill Road, so this is along here, as underground cables will be required to be laid along these sections of the highway. The nearest residential property to the site are those to the south, here, and that includes roads including Arundel Road and Ulverston Road, and in addition there is sporadic residential development just south of the eastern parcel and the surrounds fronting onto Canewdon Road and Larkhill Road. So this is the site layout plan on screen, and the western parcel here you'll see actually adjoins Fanbridge Road, and it also adjoins the site of All Saints Church, which is just indicated by my light pen there. The boundary of this parcel otherwise largely follows existing field boundaries. The eastern parcel is larger and will be accessed from the south via existing vehicular accesses onto Canewdon Road in this point here, and just on Larkhill Road here. Again, this parcel largely follows existing field boundaries, although part of the northeastern boundary, so this is along this section indicated by the light pen here, follows the edge of a public right-of-way footpath, which currently bisects the large field. There is an existing solar farm development in this locality, which is located between the 2 parcels that comprise the application site, and the existing solar farm is approximately in this location here. So to provide some greater context, the existing solar farm can be seen on this aerial image, so that's in this location here. Part of the eastern boundary of the western parcel would border the existing solar farm, as would part of the western boundary of the eastern parcel. So that's in this area here, and then this boundary here. The existing solar farm would essentially be sandwiched between the 2 parcels. However, the new solar farm would extend further north to approximately this point here on that aerial image. So the application site, as you can see, is composed of farmland, which is relatively flat and which forms part of a wider swathe of very gently undulating farmland along the southern side of the River Crouch, which is designated as a coastal protection belt in the adopted development plan. The site and surroundings are also designated as green belt. So the proposed solar farm would involve the construction of rows of solar panels mounted off the ground. Each of the blue coloured box lines, and if I just zoom into a section of this plan here, this layout plan, hopefully you can see those box blue lines, and they represent rows of panels. This plan, sorry, I'm just zoom out again. shows approximately 114 rows. So from the north of the western parcel to the south, there's approximately 114 rows down there. Access tracks would also be formed for construction and maintenance traffic, and these are shown in grey on the image on screen. So you can see one on this eastern parcel just extending up through there. The mounted panels would range in height from a minimum of between 0.9 metres and 2.8 metres to a maximum of between 1.9 and 3.8 metres. The elevation on screen shows the proposed minimum height solar arrays at the top of the screen and the higher solar arrays at the bottom. This site layout plan shows where the different height solar arrays would be located, and a significant portion would be at the minimum height, which is in the lightest colour, so that the kind of colours come out a little bit different on the screen, but these are all minimum height panels here, as are these here and these up here. As well as the solar arrays, the development would involve the siting of 18 transformers. These are pieces of equipment that would be housed in containers, and these are shown as purple rectangles on the site layout plan. So I'll just zoom in, because otherwise that's difficult to see. So that's still small, but I'll show you with the light pen. So there's two here, if you can see the light pen there. And then there's two here, which are shown with a bund around, and I'll get to that in a moment. So, and they're spread across the site. So some of the transformers would have an earth bund formed around them, and that's what I pointed out on that plan just there. And this elevation shows an image of that. Some of the transformers would not have the bund around them. So in addition, the development would involve the construction of a fenced substation compound, and this would be located in this western parcel at the point where the light pen is indicating on the screen there. This would be located close to Fanbridge Road, and it is here that the largest equipment will be sited. The transformer here will be housed in an acoustic enclosure, which would be 8 metres in height. I'll just zoom into that area of the screen. So hopefully you can see that. So this is the substation compound, which would be fenced. This is where the largest equipment is, sort of centrally positioned. And this rectangle here indicates this acoustic enclosure around the transformer there. So this plan shows a cross-section through the proposed substation at the bottom of the screen. And it shows the 8 metre high transformer enclosure indicated by this sort of grey coloured rectangle here. The whole of the substation compound would be enclosed by a 2.4 metre high palisade security fence. A building is proposed adjacent to the substation compound, which would be functional in appearance, and the elevations of that are shown on screen, and this would have a maximum height of some 3.4 metres. A further building is proposed, which is shown on the submitted plan here, to have a sloping roof to a maximum height of 4.1 metres, and this building would also be sited close to the substation compound. A 2 metre high security fence is proposed around the perimeter of the entire site, and this would feature security cameras mounted on poles at intervals. You can see that an image of that on the screen. So one of the key considerations in the determination of this application is the impact of the proposed development on the green belt. The components of the proposed solar farm, including the solar arrays, equipment, buildings and fencing, would result in an adverse impact on the openness of the green belt, creating built form on otherwise open land. Given the scale of development, the proposed impact on openness would be significant. The proposed development would amount to inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, which national policy advises should only be approved if very special circumstances exist to clearly outweigh the harm. Further harm would result from the proposed development in terms of the impact of the development on landscape character and visual amenity. The proposed development would be visible from a number of locations in the vicinity of the site, including from nearby public rights of way. The public rights of way can be seen on this extract of the public rights of way map taken from the Essex County Council website, and that's the extract on screen. The application site is located in this sort of central area here, and the public rights of way are these sort of pink lines that you can see in the vicinity of the site. Part of the eastern boundary of the western parcel, as previously mentioned, would run directly adjacent to a section of this public right-of-way footpath. And from this footpath, the existing views of open, undeveloped fields would be significantly altered by the siting of rows of solar arrays very close to the footpath. The development here would give rise to significant visual harm, and whilst proposed new hedge planting would mitigate the harm to an extent, a significant harm would result nevertheless. There are other public rights of way in the vicinity, and the impacts of those are discussed further in the report. Just take back to that site layout plan. So part of the application site directly borders the site of All Saints Church, which is a non-designated heritage asset as a building identified on the council's local list. And whilst this is not a listed building, the impact of the proposed development on this heritage asset is a material consideration. The proposed substation compound in which the larger equipment will be sited close to this asset. A greater degree of separation is now proposed compared to as originally planned as a result of the substation compound being sited slightly further south. And planting would also take place between the proposed compound and the church. So if I just zoom into this area again. So what we have is the church here, the compound here, these are all the solar arrays, and this is an area where the landscaping proposal does show tree planting and other soft landscaping, and that would be further developed, and a condition is recommended in respect of that. The applicant has undertaken a soil survey at the site and submitted a report which relates to the agricultural land classification. The results of this confirm that the land at the site is grade 3B, which is not included within the definition of best and most versatile agricultural land, where planning policy requires specific considerations are taken into account. The land between the solar arrays would be grassed and able to be used for sheep grazing. Although the land would therefore no longer be capable of arable farming, an alternative agricultural use would be possible alongside the solar arrays. It is also noted that the proposal is for a temporary, albeit substantial period of 40 years, after which the development would be removed from the land and the land able to be used once again for arable farming. A soil management strategy would be required to be implemented, which would seek to ensure that impacts on soils at the site would be kept to a minimum. In terms of flood risk, the proposed development is considered acceptable with regard to relevant policy. In respect of the impact on biodiversity and protected species, the proposed development is also considered acceptable. The applicant has undertaken the required survey work, and the submitted reports have been considered by the council's ecological consultant, and conditions are recommended where necessary. The proposal would involve a soft landscaping scheme, part of which I've mentioned, that's in that corner here, but it goes much wider than that. So this new landscaping scheme would deliver a significant extent of new hedgerows, planting throughout the site. The proposed vehicular accesses are considered appropriate, subject to Essex County Council highway recommendations requiring appropriate visibility displays, and necessary planning conditions in respect of that are recommended. The application site is within fairly close proximity of a number of residential properties, and the impacts on the residential amenity of those occupants have been considered. That's all set out in the report, and it has been found that no unreasonable adverse impacts would result. So the harm that I've mentioned in respect of the openness of the green belt, in terms of impact on visual amenity and the impact on the heritage asset, that harm must be weighed against the benefits of the scheme. The proposal here would deliver a renewable energy facility that would create up to 49.9 megawatts of power and result in significant carbon displacement, which would be beneficial in terms of helping to contribute towards combating climate change. National planning policy acknowledges that many renewable energy projects in the Greenbelt would be an inappropriate development, and recognises that in such cases, developers will need to demonstrate very special circumstances. which could include the wider environmental benefits associated with the increased production of energy from renewable sources. Both national and development plan policy adopts a positive approach towards this form of renewable energy development, where harm would be outweighed by the benefits, and the delivery of suitable renewable energy projects is fundamental to facilitate the country's transition to a low carbon future in a changing climate. It is considered that the public benefits of the proposal, in terms of significant renewable energy production, are of significant magnitude to outweigh the substantial harm that would result from the development both to the green belt and the other harm identified. It is considered that in this case, the very special circumstances do exist which would clearly outweigh the harm and justify approval of the scheme. So further to the addendum that the members have been furnished with, members are advised that there is an outstanding response awaited from Cadent Gas relating to the high pressure pipeline that runs through the site. And this relates to an easement which the layout of the solar arrays has taken into account. So if I just point out on the plan, this layout plan relates to this little section here where you can see white and no panels, and this section here, which also is white with no panels proposed. So the recommendation is slightly altered, but we recommend that the Director of Place be delegated to approve, subject to the recommended conditions, following receipt of a no objection from Cadent Gas. And if an objection from Cadent Gas is received, then the application will be returned to committee for determination. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Katie. We have two public speakers on this item. The first speaker is Mr. Lomax, who is speaking in support of the application. Mr. Lomax, please come and take your place at the microphone. You have 5 minutes to speak, and I will give you a 1 minute warning when you come towards the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. My name is Matt Lomax, Planning Manager at Low Carbon, the applicant. I wanted to start by reading a brief statement from a local resident who wanted to speak to you this evening. I begin. By speaking at this committee, I wish to reinforce my comments made previously in writing that this proposal deserves strong support. Having had experience of the planning system with this and other local authorities, I know that local residents are quick to oppose applications, but not nearly so quick to voice their support. Therefore, as soon as I saw this proposal, I was immediately in favour of it and felt it was something I should stand up for. In my opinion, the proposed development brings very positive benefits to the local area with little or no detrimental impact over its 40-year lifespan. On a wider scale, I see the need for schemes like this across the country to help us fulfil our targets for net zero and energy independence. I'm proud to live in a district that has one of the top recycling rates in the country. By granting permission to this application, I'll be even more proud that Rochford District Council continues to prioritise its green commitment and takes decisions that contribute towards making the world a better place for our children and grandchildren to thrive in. Thank you, local resident. In terms of my own speech, let's start now. Decarbonising the UK's electricity system will require an extraordinary effort. As one of the cheapest and quickest forms of low carbon electricity, solar has a key role to play in meeting net zero as soon as possible. Projects must be realised in all regions if we are to achieve it, provided their impacts can be made acceptable. Grassland Solar Farm, once operational, would provide enough electricity to power over 16,500 homes every year, which equates to 45% of the homes in the district. However, with electricity demand widely expected to double over the coming decade or so, more renewable energy will be needed. The district is around 75% greenbelt, excluding urban areas, which will make it difficult for the district to deliver the renewable energy it will need. Solar farms are temporary, and this project will be fully removed at the end of its operational life. There are very special circumstances here, a combination of the climate emergency, the energy crisis, and a lack of any suitable alternative sites. Thank you to the Council's officers and the consultees who have worked with Low Carbon throughout the development process to design a project which is sympathetic to environmental and land use constraints, mitigates impacts on the local community, and which also creates community benefit. We have worked extensively to understand concerns and ensure that these are accommodated in our proposals. This, we believe, is reflected in the low number of public comment. I'd like to talk a bit more about the additional benefits the scheme would bring. A biodiversity net gain of 50%. This would be achieved by planting 5.8 kilometres of new hedgerow and planting over 1,500 new trees. Development would allow sheep grazing during its operation. The scheme would also have a community benefit fund secured by short-form legal agreement, which sits outside of the planning process. Again, I'd like to thank officers for the comprehensive review of the application and the council more generally for its engagement. Your officers have concluded that the project provides a positive planning balance where the benefits of the project outweigh the impacts. Councillors, you have before you today a well-received proposal that can make a huge difference to the climate and energy security crisis, both locally and nationally. I would therefore urge you to support your officer's recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lomax. If you'd like to return to your seat. The second speaker is Mr. French, who is speaking in objection to the application. Mr. French, if you'd like to take your place at the microphone, you have 5 minutes and I'll give you a 1-minute warning when you come to that stage. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the committee. Grassland Solar Farm. I wonder what Barrett Consultants thought that one up. Nice ring to it, doesn't it? Kind of place you might take the family for a visit and a picnic, except you cannot, as it would be the industrial landscape fenced off from the public. It's entirely inappropriate in the green belt. A better name might be the largest solar farm in the country, which according to the original plan stands at 251 acres. It will be, if not the biggest, then among the biggest solar farms in the UK. Interestingly enough, the current largest solar farm, Shotwick, at 250 acres, produces 72 megawatts. The proposed grasslands produce only 50 megawatts, which is some 30% less. So it would seem to me to be grossly inefficient. It's proposed to supply 16,500 homes with power. Are they local? Do they benefit me, you, or residents of the borough? Do we get reduced tariffs as a result of this? The land, we're told, is agricultural land 3B, but is it that expensive to get it back to 3A? Currently, as far as I can tell, the land is being used successfully for growing crops. Why should we change that? So is there an alternative? As a general rule, it takes about 200 acres to generate the same annual electricity energy through a solar farm as just one offshore wind turbine. This represents a grossly inefficient use of precious land, whatever its quality. Solar farms do not generate continuous electricity because of the random incidence of clouds, overcast skies, which restricts electricity generation from the panels. In addition, the panels only work during daylight, whereas demand for electricity is continuous for 24 hours. With hardly any electricity generated during the winter months, the average energy produced by a solar farm is only 11% of the installed capacity of the panels, another gross inefficiency. In comparison, a north wind turbine generates over 40% of its rated output on average throughout the year. And wind turbines produce their maximum electricity in midwinter when demand for electricity is at its peak. Offshore wind power is now recognised by the government as a future for large-scale renewables in the UK. But solar panels should also be encouraged, not on agricultural land, but on existing and future roofs and wasteland, particularly where flexible thin film technology is perfected for wrapping around buildings. The UK is one of the best locations for wind power in the world, and globally, the UK is in the top spot for total offshore wind capacity due to its location. Britain's wind farms contributed a record 26.8% of the country's electricity in 2022, and this will continue to grow as more of these offshore wind farms come on stream. As an example, on the 10th of October of this year, the world's largest offshore wind farm project started producing power to the grid. Dogger Bank is a group of offshore wind farms located 80 miles off of the Yorkshire coast in the North Sea. When completed in 2026, it will have the capacity to supply over 6 million UK homes. Further, a company called Ørsted already has 12 UK offshore wind farms, producing enough electricity to power over 7 million homes. So if you can imagine, we're going to give up 250 acres just to provide 16,500 homes. So by 2026, both Dogger and Ørsted will be able to supply 50% of the UK's 26 million homes with power. Now, as far as I understand it, grasslands cannot go online apparently until 2028 due to the national grid capacity restraints. Further, this year a study by the University of Oxford concluded that by 2050, wind power will provide 2,330 terawatt hours a year. This is made up of onshore wind and also offshore wind. The combined figure of 2,330 terawatt hours is almost double the maximum estimated final energy consumption of Great Britain in 2050, which is 1,500 terawatt hours a year, almost 10 times our current electricity needs of 299 terawatt hours a year. Why allow this proposal to go ahead and see valuable land that is currently used for farming and being built over, a landscape blotted and wildlife impacted, when the offshore wind projects currently in use and being developed make solar farms like Grasslands redundant before they've even started? Further, what are the chances of the land being returned to agriculture in 40 years' time? Potentially, it could be used for building on a large scale. If this land is lost to food production now, it may never return to its natural state. Surely food security is paramount. There is an alternative to this grassland solar farm, but it's already here. It's wind power. We do not need this solar farm in Rochford. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. If you'd like to return to your seat. Ward councillors. Do we have any visiting ward members who would like to speak? No? Thank you. Okay. Committee ward councillors. Councillor Constable, can I just say to the ward members, to councillors before we start, I've had comment on not being able to hear from the audience. Can I ask you to be that close? Spread your finger and your thumb that close and direct in front of your mic when you actually speak, so as people do stand a chance of hearing out in the auditorium. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Had 2 or 3 comments about the solar farm from local residents with a couple of concerns. One is obviously the church is still a live church and it's a live graveyard where people visit, and there is a concern with the noise from the machinery that's there. Secondly, down at the bottom part of the right-hand development, there is a war memorial to the Lily Bee, which was the American airmen that lost their lives during World War II. I'm not sure whether that is actually within the farm or just outside the farm, and I would like to put a note on the development, if it was to go ahead, that this area is treated with a bit of respect, and if it is within that, it is moved, and they contact the local ward councillors to liaise with us on that point. And thirdly, the point where the development or the developer now wants to extend the time for their development. Now, Rochford Council's policy is 3 years, and I don't see any reason why that policy should be changed for this developer. If they are not in a position to be going ahead, then they should withdraw their application until they are in that position. And I would therefore like to propose that the amendment that was put in of extending it is struck out. Do I have a seconder on that, please?
Councillor Mrs. Shaw is seconding.
That's
so
it, thank you.
So we are now speaking to the amendment. Does anyone have any comment on that, please? Councillor FD.
If we strike this out from the application, I don't see how the developer will be able to put this on, because it's not him who wants the extra 2 years. It's him waiting on Power Networks to actually connect it to the grid. So if we strike this out, I don't know what the officers will be able to do on this. So I'm against this, striking this out. I think this is really not a good idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, I support Councillor Constable in that. Can we, do the officers have information on whether or not the neighbouring site was 5 or 3 years, whether or not the other applications which are going through, I know there's a few applications going through, there was one in appeal, whether or not they had the 3 years or the 5 years?
Katie?
This test. But I don't recall the other ones being 5 years. Okay. But if you wanted me to double check the decision notices, I can for absolute clarity, because I should be able to get that up in a second, but it'll take a minute.
Could you give us the reasons being why the applicant has asked for 5 years?
So, yep, if I can refer you to the addendum, page 1, so it's page 1, but it's the second point. And it says there that planning practice guidance advises that a longer time period may be justified for very complex projects where there is evidence that 3 years is not long enough to allow all the necessary preparations to be completed before development can start. So it's not council policy that development is given the standard 3-year time frame to commence, not be completed, but just to commence. That is a requirement of national planning law, okay? But the planning practice guidance, which is again national, not Rochford, allows local authorities to consider in some complex cases an extension of that. And the applicant has sort of detailed their reasons for wanting that, and that is set out on pages 1 and then overleaf on page 2 of the addendum. And what the applicant is saying, specifically in relation to this application, is that this project is dependent on an upgrade to the Rayleigh grid supply point to allow full connection. They do say that a delay is not expected at this stage, but it would give them flexibility if a 5-year timeframe were thought reasonable from the committee.
Okay, one comeback, please. Councillor Hoy.
Sorry, Chairman, just very briefly. I believe that reason has been given in other applications, at least one other application about the connection to the grid. They didn't request 5 years. They were happy with 3 years, as I remember.
Okay, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Fundamentally, I agree with the 5-year, the necessity to have a 5-year, how can I put it, a fallback position, which I believe that is what they're looking for. I would assume that if Rayleigh Grid, which is on the other side of the district, is up and running, then obviously they will be able to complete within the 3-year period. But I do understand they've got a lot of technical difficulties. It's going from one side of the district to the other to be able to connect up to the main grid at Rayleigh. So it makes sense to me to allow the extra period that is needed just in case. And I think it's a reasonable ask for a fallback position. And to deny it is actually to really preempt this application coming forward and being viable, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Constable, one comeback.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we had a briefing on this solar farm recently for all the members of the Development Committee, we was told by the applicant that they do not go ahead with their building until they have the wherewithal to connect within the grid. And we was told they already had that permission in place. If they're now saying they haven't, or it's not suitable for connection, then I can't see what the problem is. They've got 3 years to start the project. If they haven't started it within 3 years, everybody else in the district has to come back and ask for an extension for their planning permission. And I see no reason for this company not to have to do that if that is the case. So therefore I stand with my proposal.
Okay, I think we should take that to a vote now. So those in favour of the amendment to deny the 5-year the extended 5-year on the application, please indicate. Thank you. Those who agree with the addendum to allow the 5 years, please indicate. Any abstentions? That's 5 for, 4 against, 2 abstentions. That is approved. So that will become part of the substantial motion. Now, do I have members who wish to speak to the actual motion? Councillor Hoy.
I'll just try and be brief. I do note that this is going to produce 49.9 megawatts of power, which is generally enough to override the very special circumstances of Greenbelt. When I've read inspectors' reports, they tend to go with that. However, I've got concerns around the sequential testing. They say that it's done within 50 metres. I just take advice from officers. Is that fairly standard? It seems quite close to the existing land that they're using on that one. The next one I have concerns on were, I'll just go through the pages. Noise has been dealt with, it's here somewhere. It was on the place services, historic building and conservation area, page 6.57. Particularly, I'll just go straight to paragraph 3.20. I'll just read that. To conclude, the proposals are considered to result in harm to the setting and significance of a non-designated heritage asset. The local authority will have to take a balanced judgment with regards to any scale of harm or loss to the significance of the heritage assets as per paragraph 203 of the MPPF. So I don't think that's really been addressed to my satisfaction at this point, unless officers can give me more comfort on that. Then turning to the following page, 6.58, and again I'll turn to the second response, 3.22. Place services are not supported on landscaping grounds. We have significant concerns that the proposed development in conjunction with other notable schemes will have a significant adverse visual harm to the public right-of-way network. Note you put footpaths 280-05, oblique 05 and 280 oblique 09, as well as the coastal marsh landscape, etc. That's there for you to read. So they're my two concerns. And I'd also like to pick up on what Councillor Constable said regarding the Lily Bee. I visited the Lily Bee with the Scouts. They walk there every year. They have a flag sent over from America every year to lay there. I'm not sure how it lies within this scheme, but I'd really like to know that that would still be readily accessible by the Scouts. I know it's not on public ground, but they always have had permission to go there once a year. Thank you.
Katie, could you come back on those points, please?
Yep. Let's take them reverse order. So the Scout permission, do you mean permission to use the public right of way, the footpaths?
No,
you mean the actual
the
land?
Scouts have permission from the landowner to use it, and I'm just concerned whether or not the solar panels or the areas which may be restricted would restrict them from paying respects to the aircrew of the Lily Bee.
Sorry, I missed that point. The War Memorial. Yeah. I was trying to, and I think Yvonne was trying to see if we could work out exactly where the War Memorial is. I don't know if anybody knows exactly where the
Would it be possible, Chairman, to put this as an informative, possibly, to say that we've got concerns, and would they...
Sorry, Councillor, can you get a bit closer to your mic?
Sorry, Chairman. Would this be possible to put this as an informative, then, to say that we have concerns and we would like them to have discussions with the Scouts to make sure that they can still access it?
Providing it's not within the sort of, I don't think it is, but I can't confirm that because I don't know the location of the War Memorial. But providing it's not within the actual solar farm enclosure, you know, the fenced land, which I think might be more problematic in terms of allowing access within the fenced compound. I don't see any problem with an informative that points out that a War Memorial is within the vicinity of the site and care should be taken, maybe in relation to construction activities and whatnot. I don't see any problem with that. In terms of the Essex County Council landscaping comments that you have referred to, which conclude that in their view, the proposal would result in significant adverse visual harm to visual amenity, with specific reference to the public footpath, I think we agree and we accept that. And in the report, that harm is part and parcel of the harm that has to be balanced against the benefits. So that's essentially what needs to happen in the planning balance considerations, which obviously officers have advised in the report and concluded with a recommendation of approval. So that significant adverse visual harm, we say, will happen. And then the harm to the heritage asset hasn't been addressed. It exists, I suppose, in that consultee's or it will exist in that consultee's professional view. So what you've got is this non-designated heritage asset here, and and this development, they say, will affect the setting of that, and we don't disagree with them. So that is other harm that would result. And in addition to that, I think, as I set out, there will be harm to the green belt, which I think members are, aware of. And so that all of that harm has to be balanced against the benefits of this development. And that's set out. The only one that I am struggling with a little bit is the sequential test. Do you mean in respect of flood risk? I think you probably do. 50 meters. I don't know if there's a reference. I'm trying to find that reference in the report, and I can't. But a sequential test would not take and just look at land within 50 meters of an application site.
It's on page 6.40, paragraph 2.149. The search area covered approximately 500 metres on either side of the identified connection point, as this was considered to be the maximum distance between a connection point and a solar farm of this size to allow for a potentially viable connection.
So I think this section of the report, sorry, is sorry, let me just read that section. Sorry, so I thought you'd said 50 meters. So it says 500 meters in that paragraph. And that's to do with there being a constraint in terms of the proposal, in terms of the connection point to the grid. So it's looking at other land within that sort of area and whether the whole of this development could be delivered on land that would be at a lower flood risk. So we say that the sequential test is passed and the Environment Agency raised no objection on flood risk grounds. So we're quite satisfied that the development would meet the requirements of flood risk policy.
Sorry, I just want to be quite clear on that point. I remember being talked very extensively by Sean Squashin about sequential testing. And I didn't think that was part of it. I'll let that go. The only other point I wanted to make was that there are 30 conditions on this. I seem to remember being warned a few years ago about planning by condition on one of our courses. It does seem quite excessive, the number of conditions on there, which might suggest to me that we're trying to get around the problems of this by imposing conditions, whereas in fact, if you took out the conditions, it would not be suitable. So that's where I'm coming from at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. I did want, my first point was the memorial, just to make sure that the scouts or whoever would like to go and do that.
Do you know actually where it is on the site?
I have been shown it, but I couldn't take it. I would believe Roger Constable would know, Councillor Constable would know more than I would on that. But I have been shown it, but no, I can't see it. But perhaps our officers can do it. But on the other point I'd like to make, Chairman, on the conditions, and you're right, there is a lot, on item 16, page 6.6, condition, it says about the trees, and I was reading on page 6.58, 3.24, and I had to read this a couple of times because I did read it as, I don't know why, because we're talking about sheep, female black sheep, I thought, and it was actually a rare female black poplar at the site. So, excuse me, can we make sure that tree is in the conditions on item 16, please, condition 16, that tree is not going to be pulled up. Oh, whoops, accidentally knocked it over by a contractor, which does happen. Okay, so that's on 6.58, 3.24, about this rare, identified a female black poplar at the site. This is a very rare tree. And if you go to 6.6 with the trees, can that be be put in there, please. I'd rather wait for a response.
Hi,
you.
sorry, I'm just trying to work out the page number. So we're on the condition that relates to tree protection is on page 6.6, condition 16. Right, let me just, so that requires that no development take place until an arboricultural method statement and tree and hedge protection plan has been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. Thereafter, only carried out in relation to that tree is not proposed to be taken out. If you want specific mention to that, I don't see any particular harm. So we could just, where it says details of trees and hedges to be retained and removed, we could just add something in there that should be only those hedgerows, because actually only sections of hedge that are to be removed shall be as per the submitted statement, if you like, that they've done an arboricultural impact assessment, and that categorically says, and we can say not that tree. But it's not just that one we want to protect, although that's particularly special.
Yeah, but just sort of thinking, with these trucks on site, whoops, we've knocked it down, it's damaged, it's got to come out. I just didn't want to make sure that tree is protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newcombe.
Thank you, Chairman. Katie, on 6.48, 2.203, when it mentions the high pressure gas pipeline, I know you mentioned Cadent earlier, but this part references the HSE and awaiting a response, which will be reported on an addendum, which I don't think we've received the addendum for that.
We've got an addendum. What we hoped you would have is an updated response from Cadent Gas. So the HSE, the Health and Safety Executive, is a consultee because of the high pressure gas pipeline that runs through the site. But actually, what the consultation with the HSE involves is planning officers putting that through a web app, if you like, that the HSE provide nationally. And we've put that through, this development through the web app, and it involves plotting the site, and then the web app gives you an output. And that on both parcels informs us that the HSE does not advise against this development. And that's what we'd expect, really, because what the HSE are seeking to do is protect people, okay, from potential major hazards associated with the high pressure gas pipeline. And this development is not introducing residential development. It's not introducing lots of use that would involve lots of people congregating in this area where they might raise an objection. So actually the HSE through that web app does not advise against. However, to be cautious, what we haven't had back yet is a response from Cadent Gas, who actually sort of operate the pipeline, if you like. And they have given us an email with a holding objection back in May, but the objection doesn't talk of, the email doesn't, although it says objection, it doesn't identify any concerns. What it does say, essentially, is that their engineers haven't had chance to review the proposal. So we are awaiting that, but we anticipate it being a no objection because the HSE web app says they do not advise against, and the applicant has, sought to form a layout and site equipment considering that constraint. Okay, but what we are saying in the revised recommendation is that if members determine the application this evening, we would ask you to devolve power to, or delegate authority, sorry, to Phil, to issue the decision, the director of play, sorry, to issue the decision once we've got a no objection from Cadent Gas, which I hope to have tomorrow or early next week. But just to err on the side of absolute caution. And the final thing to say is if we did get a different response from them, then it would come back. to you.
Thank you. Members, now we have 10 minutes left in which we can legally proceed. Therefore, I will move a motion without notice in line with Committee Procedure Rule 9N to extend the meeting beyond 2.5 hours for 30 minutes to complete the remaining business. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Shaw, those in favour? Okay, those against? Okay, we are extended for half an hour.
Chairman, if I may, I'll have to leave after the end of this item, if that's okay. I apologise.
That's
for that.
fine, yes. Thank you.
Chairman, just to let you know, Councillor Linden has done the what 3 words for the war memorial, and then we've passed it over to the officers so they know where it is. Okay. What 3 words, so we can't do that. So, all right, but at least they actually know where it is. But that's Councillor Linden found it. Thank you.
While we're waiting for that, does anyone else have any comments they wish to make? Councillor Efty.
Thank you, Chairman. Solar panels make up part of the diversity of energy generation, including wind and other new technologies that are coming through. And I think it's really great that these companies come to Rochford and want to invest in Rochford for these ways to generate electricity to make us less reliant on carbon and foreign countries supplying our electricity, and makes us more self-sufficient. And I support this wholeheartedly, and I think it's something that we should embrace, but it's up to the rest of the committee to make their decision. And last plan application, I think that we've declared a climate emergency was mentioned quite a few times, and we have declared a climate emergency. And hopefully, the way the thinking is at the moment, this is one of the ways of combating that. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Hoy, one comeback.
Yes, it's not a comeback. It's just so that councillors do know that we as a council do have a policy on generation of electricity through solar farms, which is to reach 100 megawatt by 2030. We're at 60 now, so if we do approve this, we'll have beaten that target.
Okay, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad that Councillor Efty just brought this up because I think it's quite important. But I'd like to add something which, I mean, I've been looking into for a long time. We're talking about land which is 3B, which is totally unsuitable for agriculture, but it's perfectly suitable for this application coming forward. But I think what people need to think of going to the future, we're looking at land which, as some people are saying, is being lost to agriculture. But this land is totally unsuitable for that purpose. But with a solar farm, and I've seen other examples, it then allows production of vertical farming, which then brings unsuitable land back into production because it needs the energy. And I would urge members of this committee to look to the future rather than just looking at the moment, because this will enable greater production of food through vertical farming because it's very energy necessary, and this will provide that energy. And I would urge members, even though it's not within this application, it is something that this application will allow to come through later. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? No? Okay. One of the things I think about this is that when we're talking about possibly losing land, we are in a position where this can be returned. Technology will change over the years, and I dare say that there will come a stage where this will become defunct. But we have an assurance from the applicant that this farm could be taken out at a later time and returned to agriculture. One of the things that I am aware of, because I have my factory opposite this particular site, is that the fields that are in the biggest area of the application are not, they've had nothing done with them. They're just land that has just been left fallow. There's a friend of mine who actually used to use one of the fields for flying his radio-controlled aircraft. So there's no farming being done on that. I do think that we need to consider it in the view of our climate change, or our climate emergency, in that we are dealing with some of the requirements that come under that. So I am in support of this application, and if there are no other members wishing to speak on it, I would propose from the chair that we move forward with approval. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Williams, sorry. We're talking about the war memorial now. Now that it's been determined where it actually is, could you come back on that, please?
Yeah, so based on the what through words, and we have had it located, it's outside the site. So I think it's somewhere approximately down here. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the only other thing is, as Councillor Shaw suggested, that we have an inclusion, I think it will be in the item, sorry, condition 16, with regards to the tree that is there, that is special. I'm not sure if we need to actually vote that in. That can just be included in the conditions. Am I right? This special tree, can that just be included in the conditions? We don't need to vote specifically in that, do we? No? Okay. All right. Okay. So those in favour of the application, please indicate. That is unanimous. Thank you, members. That motion, the application is approved. We move on to item 8. I would just say, just in case there is anyone actually hanging on, the item that has been deferred, has been referred to the committee, the last item on our agenda. I am going to defer that because of time to December meeting, and that will be in 2 weeks' time. Apologies to those who have come along to talk about that. I'm very sorry, but we are running out of time, and there's a limit to how long we can concentrate. I do apologise, but in the meantime, right, we have 30 minutes to do this last application. Sorry. With item 8, then, we'll give it a go, but bearing in mind that we only have half. Okay, we'll give it a go. We have no public speakers on this one, so hopefully we can get through this fairly quickly. Claire, would you like to bring the...
So this application is a reserved matters application seeking consent for the details of a mixed-use scheme for residential and commercial development, which is subject to an outline planning permission granted on appeal in 2021. So just to be clear, the principle of development here has already been accepted, and we're looking at the reserved matters element of the scheme. So the residential element is described as a retirement village for persons aged over 55 years. As you can see from the location plan, the site is Cherry Orchard Brickworks, a former brickwork site that has long been redundant, located within Rochford. The areas outlined in blue show other land within the same ownership. So the site to the west is a children's nursery that was granted planning permission in 2018. And the area to the southeast is a parcel of land within the same ownership that will come forward as a separate reserved matters application for commercial development within the future. I'll do 2, please, Katie. Sorry, that's my thing if you need it, actually. This is an aerial perspective of the site location to show the current context of the site. So immediately to the south, we have the Airport Business Park currently under construction. You can see the roundabout, access way there, and some of the facilities have already been built, so Costa Coffee and some other commercial buildings down here.
We also have a row of residential dwellings bordering the site here, Cherry Orchard Country Park here, and Ashton Football Club up here. And the parcel of land just here is an area of land owned by Southend City Council, and is also within the Joint Area Action Plan for employment use. We have Plan 3, please, Katie, thank you. Can you zoom out slightly so I can see the whole thing? Thank you. So this application seeks approval of reserved matters relating to scale, landscaping, layout, appearance and internal access. The main access points for the site are located to the northwest, so here, southwest and the south. They've already been agreed as part of the outline application, and they're not for reconsideration as part of the current application. They're also now proposing a link here, which is an eastern link, which would link through to the South End City Council land, which we don't have any information about what that would be proposed to be developed like just yet, but it provides that connection point through to it. So the proposal includes a 93-bed care home with its own car park. So that element of the scheme is located here. Sorry, 93. Sorry, I'm trying to go a little bit quicker. It's a 93-bed care home located here. As you come around the access road, we then have to the rear here on the northern boundary, 22 two-storey dwellings. They would all be two-bedroomed. Then to the south of those, this is a collection of 9 bungalows, again, all two-bedroomed. We've got open space here with a bandstand located here, other areas of open space scattered about here. And then along this eastern edge are 5 four-storey blocks. The first 4 blocks have commercial at the bottom and then residential above, and the last one just has residential. The first 2 have sheltered accommodation within them. Sorry. The second 2 have assisted living, and the 4th one also has an element of retirement apartments, and the 5th has solely retirement apartments located within it. The commercial for blocks 2, 3 and 4 has not been detailed, but the description refers to Class E, which covers a whole manner of different uses that fall within commercial, business and service. Block 1 houses the convenience store and GP surgery at ground floor level, and they were a requirement of the outline planning permission. So that would provide some immediate services on the actual application site. Move on to Plan 4, please, Katie. Thank you. So this shows an elevation of what the care home would look like, and that's the entranceway into the site perspective. So the building would be staggered in height. It'd have a 4-storey element on the southeastern corner, so that would be away from the existing development and the proposed bungalows, but would provide a feature corner there. We've got a glazed entrance lobby here as well. Moving on to Plan 5, please, Katie. Thank you. This is just an example of one floor of the layout here. So it would have various communal uses. So you'd have an internal, at the ground floor level, just be an internal area here for them, external area for them to use, courtyard, terraces. We would also have lounges and dining areas proposed, bars, a bar and a cinema area as well. The possible operator is considered to be Runwood Homes, so it's been designed with them as the potential end user. Moving to Plan 6, please, Katie. So this is the elevation of the bungalow. So we're looking at quite a modern appearance with a steep pitched roof, modern use of materials and good glazing level. And looking at Plan 7, this is the dwellings, which have a very similar look to the bungalows. But we also have, each of them would have a carport here, a first floor terrace as well located here to provide some amenity spaces along with a rear courtyard and balcony as well. If we can look at Plan 8, please, Katie. So the 5 mostly mixed-use blocks all have a similar appearance with 4 stories and the use of balconies and material changes to break up the scale and appearance of the elevations. So each block would use a different colour cladding to create visual interest. Blocks 2 to 4 would have ground floor linkages to the commercial to create a continuity of frontage. If we move on to Plan 9, please, Katie. So this is block 5, the one that would have the solely the retirement apartments within it. It would have a roof terrace. This is the main difference between this and the other blocks here, and there'd be 2 structures at the top to provide access to and from the roof area there. If we can finish on Plan 3, Katie, please. So the key material planning considerations are layout, including residential amenity, provision of commercial floor space, amenity space, dwelling mix and refuse and waste storage, scale, which includes technical housing standards, internal access, including vehicular and pedestrian access, car parking and cycle and power two-wheeler parking, appearance, landscaping and other matters. It should be noted that changes have been made during the course of the application to address design and layout concerns raised by officers. Now, the officer's recommendation does go in detail into all of the different material considerations listed there, so I'm not going to go through each element separately to explain those, because it's all listed in quite a lot of detail within the report. But what I do need to just add to is on the addendum, there was reference from Essex Fire and Rescue with regards to access to the northwestern corner of the care home and making sure that had sufficient access from a fire appliance perspective. The agent provided additional plans to confirm that they would be able to accommodate for that, and that has been accepted by Essex Fire and Rescue. So they are content with that now. So the recommendation is that the Director of Place be delegated to approve the application on the expiry of the outstanding consultation period and subject to the conditions outlined in the recommendation and addendum. It should be noted that the site notice expires tomorrow, so the consultation period has only 1 day left to run. Officers are presenting this to members ahead of the expiry, as the applicant has advised of contractual obligations necessitating a decision at this meeting that are time critical and may otherwise threaten the project. It was considered reasonable to do so in this instance, as the site already has outlined permission for the principle of development, and we have not received any neighbour responses so far to the consultation process. However, if the council do receive a response, it is considered to be material to the application, such as a neighbour raising concern around potential overlooking, then this application will be returned to committee for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Ward councillors have Councillor Williams. Would you like to speak first?
Thank you, Chairman. No, nothing other than I should have declared a non-pecuniary interest on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Visiting members, would you like to, or visiting member, I should say? Okay, thank you. Councillor Ward.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I do welcome this, and I do have personal experience of Runwood homes, isn't it? My mother-in-law was in one, and they are superb. And I think anyone who actually ends up in one will be treated well. I've just got one question for the officers. In regards to solar, I was looking through the app. Is there solar on the roofs, on the area within this particular development? Is that mentioned in any way? Because I couldn't find it.
We don't have detail at this stage, but it is a condition that was on the outline application, as far as I recall, which actually required that level of information to be provided. So that's something that we'll get in as part of a discharge condition for the outline, albeit we've obviously got a bit more detail now with this current application.
If I can just then put into the equation, because I've been very interested in net zero and housing and such like, I've noticed that in a lot of occasions now coming forward, you mentioned cladding on the front of the apartments. I've noticed that in some of the new design, instead of using cladding, which I know has got a strange name at this moment, it's been using fire resistant solar. So it actually is able to take the light and use that light to upgrade the energy efficiency of the building. I would like that to possibly be considered as an alternative. And in fact, it works out a bit cheaper, I believe, than cladding, from what I understand.
Where we have the condition on the outline, as far as I recall, I'll double check in a moment with regards to renewables, then I think we could use it there. We also have a condition around materials as part of the application suggested as well before members tonight. So
Okay.
I think that could sufficiently accommodate consideration of materials. It may not be what we end up with. It depends, because obviously we're looking at the design of it as well.
Absolutely.
But I think it's something that potentially could be considered
It would
collectively, maybe.
it would make the development extremely energy efficient. That's what I was looking at, actually, as far as that question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that can obviously be part of the conversations going forward. So thanks for pointing that out. Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chairman. Does feel like a bit of a rush job, this one, if I'm honest. The presentation was extremely fast. I do have a bit of a concern here, and I don't know if we can do anything about this, but that makes a lovely car park for the airport visitors. And I do have a concern about how parking is going to be controlled on that site. Is that something we can deal with at this stage? All right, okay, so that's okay then. And the other issue that I was going to raise, just following on from Councillor Ward, is the EPC rating of the buildings a building regs issue, or is that something that would come in? No, planning.
Yeah, it'd be building regs, that would be.
So we don't know what EPC rating that's going to be built to. No.
No, not at the moment.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mufti.
Thank you, Chairman. I can't believe anybody has not mentioned street scene. This is not Rochford. This looks like a European, like, tower blocky sort of thing. I don't see Rochford there. I just don't see it. I can't think anywhere else in Rochford that looks anything like that. I don't know if you can put me straight on that, but the street scene just doesn't.
I think,
look like Rochford.
Sorry, when in the design access statement, I know where the developer has been going with, they've been trying to create these like kind of micro characters on the site. This site is sort of like unique, sits on its own to an extent, really. It's not kind of bordering Rochford. So I think it had a potential to create a unique appearance to it. And I think with the design access statement, is sort to use new materials, but also try and still bring in the element of brickwork, obviously characteristic of the former brickwork site within their design. I think that's their design principles and design coding really around it.
Can I just come back? I'm not against it. I think it's a good development. I think it would create jobs and everything else because I voted for it the first time, but I just don't think it's very. The street scene is great. Thanks.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you. As the point that Councillor Shaw made is this was originally intended to be a gated community. I'm pretty certain that that was refused at outline planning. It isn't gated. As far as I'm aware, it was done at appeal.
No, it's not a gated community. So
Okay, how are we doing? Any more comments?
Sorry, so that does take me back to my original question about as in the planning stage, can we look at how parking is restricted on that site?
I mean, it would be largely down to the actual maintenance arrangements of the site itself. I mean, the sort of a lot of the roadways, etc., will be private, along with parking areas, and they'll have their own maintenance and management company associated with that. So it would be controlled privately through those routes.
So that site is not going to be built to adopted standards.
It will be built to adopted standards, but I don't think the proposal is to put it forward for adoption. They're intended to keep it private. I believe is the plan. So therefore, the parking area would remain that way. Too. And they'll need an element, a large degree of element of parking to support the actual development itself as well. So I'd be surprised if the actual management company would want to lose anything to airport parking. I'm sure they want to control it themselves separately.
Right, so it just brings me back to a point on that, where if that management company then decide to enforce a permit scheme, is that something we can condition? I'm just in theory talking about it because I just want to know at the planning stage if we can condition against that sort of thing. Or
I mean, to be honest, I think it could still potentially be reasonable when we do still impose on residential major development schemes the use of car parking spaces to be retained for parking of vehicles only, for example. I think we could probably on this one require that it be only used for the parking of vehicles in association with this particular site. I think that probably be a reasonable condition to avoid. It'd still be someone visiting the site, though, wouldn't it? I think collective view is that it is down to the management company. It potentially wouldn't be an enforceable condition that would meet the tests if we were to impose that. So I think we need to stick with the view that it'd be down to the management company.
Councillor Ward.
If I can be of some assistance on this one, if we look behind where Marks and Spencer's and the new establishment there, that has parking restrictions which are actually only allow those people who live on the site or are visiting that site, and that is managed privately, and that's in the whole area. So, you know, I think it's doable. It's down to the management of this developer and how it's done. It is outside, it's their private concern, in my opinion.
Councillor Efty.
This is probably about 3 miles away from the airport entrance. This is nowhere. I don't see what anybody in their right mind would want to park there to drag their cases about 3 miles to the airport entrance. There's a lot closer places. Just making that point.
Okay, I think we've done that one to death now. So we need to move on from that. Just a personal comment. When the Vice Chair and myself met with officers on pre-meet, I did actually express my opinion, the same as Councillor Efty, that I thought that especially the 5 blocks were particularly ugly and not in keeping with Rochford, but it is something that unfortunately it would appear Police Services are very happy with. So we don't really have that much of a say on that sort of side of things. I think we need to move on unless there's anyone got any other comments, because we are getting close to time now. So with regards to the application, recommendation is to approve the application subject to conditions set out on pages 8.1 to 8.12 of the report and pages 7 to 8 of the addendum. I will move approval from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ward, thank you. All those in favour, would you raise your hand? Those against? Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. That is 6 for, 1 against, 4 abstentions. That application is approved. And with that, and being as how we only have 10 minutes left, as I said before, I'm going to close the meeting there at 10:20. Thank you for your attendance tonight, everybody, and
Chair,
for your patience.
Excuse me, the last one that we've had deferred for the next meeting, can we have that on as an item agenda 1, please?
I will ensure that is so.
Thank you, because we've got visiting councillors that have been waiting here all night and we haven't had put it through.
Understood.